was a wonderful presentation, Holzner, I believe, and it will complement exactly what I'm going to be speaking of today, looking at debunking the consideration of exercise as our entirety of medicine. And so what I would like to do is talk about these considerations of the fallacies of exercise medicine, and to the esteemed viewers and listeners to understand the practical strategies to be able to leverage the full potential of physical activity to replace exercise as this moniker so that we can meet and exceed the world standards. Very briefly, from my background, you'll see that I'm a physical therapist and have been since 1991, board certified in neurologic physical therapy, and have excellent expertise not only in neurogeriatrics as well as in sports throughout my career. Understanding that all individuals need the opportunity to be active, and we just choose what would be the best option for us, be that exercise or physical activity. I offer to the colleagues my contact information should you want to reach me by the end of this to extend a learning opportunity or to connect for collaboration. Understanding that exercise as medicine has been something that we've considered and certainly became very popular. We used to believe that walking would serve everything that we would need, and an individual into their 60s, 70s, and 80s just had to maintain a walking routine. Then we pivoted and believed that everything could be benefited just through aerobic exercise. And we hit an exercise craze, especially into the late 70s and 1980s, to prevent cardiovascular disease through group aerobics and the like. Then we believed and understood that we needed to add some resistance training in because muscles provide an anti-inflammatory immune system boost and otherwise, and also to prevent falls. And at this point, we also elevated resistance training in the years that would follow so that we could prevent injurious falls, that an individual would need to have a degree of muscle bulk to prevent the lateral hip fracture, and a gluteal strength would potentially prevent that. Now we feel like we've got it. Now we feel like we've arrived. Exercise is truly medicine, walking, aerobic, resistance, and more resistance for all the reasons. But in fact, have we arrived? Because individuals across the world will project that they do not like to exercise and therefore are not meeting the standards. So the secrets to a century, according to the Blue Zones, would be find purpose, have purpose, stay involved within the nuclear and expanded families. You'll live to 100 if you have purpose. Then find a routine, your routine, stick with it. Continue to develop your social and friend network outside of your nuclear family. Noting that you're going to actually lose some of these friend networks, we need some resilience. Then try to potentially compete in something new, compete against yourself for mental agility, physical agility, capacity to do a broad jump. Can I still touch the ceiling or the top of that door? Find something that you choose. Mow that lawn as quickly as you possibly can. And two that we cannot explain yet are dangerous to discuss are the considerations of this century, what it takes throughout your preconceived notions about a non-fat diet and about alcohol. So we have to think about these things. What does it truly take to live longer, but also to live healthier? And so then in these Blue Zone studies, we thought initially all of these things mattered. Mediterranean diet, climate, near the equator, no alcohol, physically active, be purposeful, have a social connection. But now we're finding out that in fact, having that purpose in the form of a physical activity, which is engaged in the nuclear and extended family, may be the ultimate clear secret, because this keeps us socially connected, wanted, needed, purposeful, and in fact, viable for not only lifespan, but also health span. So now we're finding that there are easy ways to procure health such as a movement snack, including vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity, VILPA, which can actually have an extensive return on investment, including potentially a 4 to 7x increase in your lifespan for every minute you're spending in invigorating exercise that is within the purpose of your life. We are looking for ways to pivot exercise snacks into movement snacks, finding them conveniently throughout the day, and ideally be purposeful. So vigorous intermittent exercise snacks, purposeful within your day, accumulating the exercise minutes that the World Health Organization is recommending, including considerations of recreational movement as well for individuals as they prefer. Now, understanding that there are some fallacies of aging that we have to debunk to enable and to empower individuals so that they feel that they can do something truly about the rate at which they're aging. Number one, if I've got pain, I shouldn't move. Let's debunk that. Number two, I might fall. If I might fall, I shouldn't move. In fact, the reverse is true. If you might fall, you should be doing some movement in a informed and intelligent way so that you reduce your risk of falling. Number three, if I have a progressive condition, dementia, Parkinson's disease, or otherwise, I shouldn't move. A fallacy that must be debunked. Number four, if I have low energy, I shouldn't spend it. Obviously, for those of you in attendance, you know it could not be farther from the truth. It is truly an investment principle, and why don't we pivot it and frame it as an investment principle for those individuals? Number five, if I am using a cane or a brace or a walker, I'm losing. In fact, we can use devices to enable ourselves to be more physically active and safer as we do so. Number six, I'm losing if my movement is not perfect. I swing my leg out to the side, I lift my leg up a little bit, I waddle a little bit as I walk. I shouldn't be walking. Again, could not, should not be farther from the truth. Number seven, I am losing if movement provokes any symptoms, pain, dizziness, or a movement disorder. So truly, we have 7 ways to debunk some of the fallacies and notions that individuals should not be moving and could be moving into and potentially out of some of the conditions they have. So we're looking for a way to chase health span, not through exercise, but through physical activity and matters of aging debunked. So we all are very familiar with the World Health Organization weekly guidelines on physical activity. I will not waste your valuable time looking at these ranges. You're familiar with them. However, we have to understand these can be procured outside of the realms of exercise, inviting individuals to count or compete or gamify into the minutes that they're looking for accumulating across a week to beat their previous record or to meet and even exceed these weekly standards. These can be found in recreational, in vocational, in purposeful, in vigorous intermittent lifestyle, or even, as you prefer, in exercise. So we may consider that exercise is prescription medicine, prescribed by therapists, by physicians, by exercise physiologists, by trainers, by personal trainers, coaches, and otherwise. It has structure, it has dosage, sometimes it has a copay, gym membership, equipment, or otherwise. And in fact, when we take this medicine, sometimes there may be side effects. However, physical activity may be over-the-counter medicine sometimes and most often without a copay, with supplemental benefits in terms of productivity. Because I'm physically active, I may be helping other persons, providing an oxytocin or even a serotonergic benefit. It may be preventative before I have a health event. So again, it's over the counter. There may be no barriers to access in terms of needing a prescription or even having pharmacy or, if you will, gym or physical therapy clinic hours. Again, physical activity can be over the counter, consumed in the form that this individual prefers and believes will work for them, and it may be consumed for benefits beyond physical health into mental health and the like. So you may choose to actually see physical activity as medicine in the fashion that you do, such as Dr. Peter Attia competing for his centenarian decathlon, looking for activities that he can do once he turns 100, and he's preparing himself for those according to VO2, strength, agility, flexibility, and balance. And you can certainly look this video up on your own. And we certainly understand that an article similar to what I've written here, framing practical applications for lifespan and health span, that I published with my colleagues earlier this year, looking in fact at the consideration now that ultimately individuals will be procuring physical activity if they realize that the form of physical activity that they prefer, again, the primary through line being choice. When individuals choose what to put on their plates in terms of physical activity, and they see that it can be equally or more beneficial than exercise because I've chosen it, I believe in it, I feel that this is healthy for me, so I get dopamine. I may be choosing it for my own future investment. I'm helping my future self. Therefore, it's oxytocinergic and serotonergic. It is antidepressive. And if I'm coerced into or guilted or legislated into exercise, it will be none of those for mental and immune health benefits. So as I quoted here, we actually have tried to legislate and regulate and guilt people. We need choice. So what does choosing to be physically active do for the brain? Well, the basics are that it's releasing endorphins and informing the individual that they have a sense of wellness. It suppresses pain nociceptors. It actually releases serotonin when we choose to do something that is physically active that we believe is healthy for us. We experience wins in the forms of gamifying, personal best steps per day, wattage created, streaks of number of days of being physical active, and the like. We engage then in higher volumes, more intense physical activity. We may be productive to help other people. We understand that we are experiencing the physical benefits that can be protective from the dangers of a fall or an emergency room visit, or even succumbing to an illness. And finally, we understand that physical activity promotes circulation throughout not only the body, but also the brain. So physical activity is brain health in terms of mental, but also cognitive health for acetylcholine, dopamine, neuroplasticity, and the like. Now, we also understand that choice involves a degree of the placebo effect. Again, research started by Dr. Andrew Gears and colleagues out of Ohio, understanding that when we have had an opportunity to make a belief stated and our choices implemented, that in fact we get a bonus for whatever we are participating in because of the placebo effect. Not of placebo, but the placebo effect. And so we understand that with all of this, we have mental health, positive outcomes in belief, reward, attempts to pursue again, higher intensity, intrigue, playfulness, and innovation. So if we were to start a strength walking program or any one of these, pickleball, dance, etc., we may be looking for early positive changes. So we are walking faster, taking more steps, completing that lap or block around our home once or twice per day, not looking for longer term changes in blood glucose, body weight, or otherwise. We're looking for early positive changes. I'm not as fatigued when then we become more engaged, we increase our intensity, we increase the volume and frequency, and therefore this is the virtuous cycle that causes us to pursue it again. Remember, look for those positive changes, coach yourselves, your family members, and your patients to look for it in terms of tolerance, energy, heart rate, and recovery. These are the quick and immediate changes. Permit yourselves and others to look for ways to prove that you are, through a third party disinterested arbitrator, an app that you have, a wearable that you have, that you're proving to yourself you're actually better. And the dopamine reward cycle actually is giving us the badges and the levels and the points and the rewards. We increase our volume and frequency, and therefore this becomes a virtuous cycle and leads to an identity that you call yourself a walker, a weightlifter, a pickleball player, and you notice the dopamine hits at every single stage, including a success. Even times that you don't set a personal best, you get a dopamine spike through a near miss, which causes you to try to inflect or lean in again to see if you can go for that new personal best. Now you get the long-term changes that you might be looking for. Now you're addicted. Now your identity is consistent with this. And you can even invest forward toward loss aversion, investing in your future 10 and 20 years old self. You establish an identity that becomes formulated in your brain in neuroplasticity. Here, colleagues, I offer to you some very easy opportunities across this slide that I've also sent in the form of a handout for this conference, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but as you'll see here, I've created exercise snacks for you, movement snacks for you, or VILPAs, vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity, in the forms of aerobic, strength, as you see here, when arising from a couch once, do 5 of them. Occasionally get down on the floor and get back up. Try to 3 to 5 of those. Those can be done in the length of a commercial. As you'll see here, I've also provided them in the forms of interval or mixed training, strength and balance, flexibility, dynamic balance, aerobic plus balance, mixed activities plus flexibility, as well as some autonomic opportunities to be able to regulate and improve heart rate variability. So we see that exercise for the win is extremely important here as we create a systemic resilience in individuals across all attributes, but it's not exercise for the win, it's physical activity for the win. Because when we challenge ourselves through intentional stressors, such as physical activity that can be intense, we actually provide ourselves the best opportunity to combat unintentional stressors. We just need to be very careful that we have not overloaded or overdosed ourselves. More on this in an upcoming article. If you're interested, just contact me for more. But remember, if we don't subject ourselves to intentional stressors, all we have is the upper left-hand quadrant that our life is out of control and all stressors accumulate. However, if we use the right side, upper right, we can actually begin to use, as you'll see, intentional life stressors across the bottom, and those can mitigate the unintentional life stressors across the top. What we would never want is to overdo it with intentional or never have both. No unintentional, no surprise, no challenges, and no unintentional, a life filled with cortical atrophy and boredom. So we induce intentional stressors, and we look at the benefits of improving resistance to oxidative stress, repair of DNA, recycle of damaged cells, and regeneration of mitochondria through proliferation. So the maximum to minimum trajectory as we begin to wrap out is that we thought that aging was always going to have a loss if we're not as good as we were at our 20s. Therefore, at our 20s and 30s, life was just going to go down in an accelerated fashion. And we're starting to not only soften that line up, but also to understand that at any one point in our lives, we can intervene, we can slow the trajectory and not experience losses, but no one is ever outside of the realm of improving strength, balance, or aerobics. We can improve anytime and reverse the trend here just through intervening using physical activity in a fresh start, in gamifying, and in giving people the facts about physical activity. So we use activity as a favorite. Make it familiar, accessible, valuable, obvious, recreational, innovative, timely, and energizing, whether it's exercise or not. And so I encourage all of you to stay in contact. If you'd like, you can read more about this in my 70,000 word book, looking at physical activity through nutrition, through sleep, through social connectivity, and exploring innovative opportunities. So I encourage you to stay connected. Again, my email is simply my name, mike@mikestuder.com. You can learn more about me also through my social media handles. And I've offered to you, just as a bonus, slides here that you can procure more information. Out of respect for the conference and to keep things on time, I'll turn everything back over to our moderator. And I want to thank you for hosting me again today.